get everything. First, I want to thank all the media for being here this afternoon. In our county last night, we had a tip from a tipster that they had been a double murder that occurred in Cherokee County. That tip came into the sheriff's office around 7 p.m. last night. We sent detectives to a residence at 411 Jumping Branch Road in the Blacksburg community of Cherokee County. And the tipster provided information that two persons had been shot in the home a couple of days ago, and their bodies had possibly been put in the Broad River here in Cherokee County. And also the person at the residence was removing carpet and other items from the home in an attempt to destroy the evidence. And so I provided a timeline of events for you, and we'll cover that. As I said, at 7 p.m. we received that tip. We had a detective on scene at 7:30. Upon that detective's arrival at 411 Jumping Branch Road, he saw a subject outside with a large debris pile that was burning. As he approached the pile, he saw carpet, which corroborated the story, the information he received in the tip. The officer immediately extinguished the fire to try to preserve any evidence that was there. After speaking to the suspect at the home, who is listed as suspect number 1 on your paperwork there, it's Donald Cresswell Jr. After speaking with him, he called for additional officers to come to the scene, and additional officers arrived at the scene. At that point in time, our officers went to the local magistrate to obtain a search warrant for the home to look for additional evidence of a possible shooting that had occurred there at 411 Jumping Branch Road. And we obtained that search warrant at 8:45 p.m. last night. Once we made entry into the home, we clearly saw that a crime had been committed within the home and outside the home. There was evidence there that led our officers to believe that in fact someone had been shot. We did not have any victims last night. We began to search parts of the Broad River where normally we find vehicles that are pushed into the Broad River. We didn't find anything last night. Our crime scene guys processed the scene throughout the night with a large amount of evidence to gather. We kept the scene secured all night long, allowed them to go home and get a little bit of sleep. They came back out, continued processing that scene at about 8 this morning, and they processed that scene throughout this afternoon. They just cleared up within the past hour, actually at that residence, obtaining evidence from the particular crime. This morning, prior to that, the suspect number 1, Mr. Donald Cresswell, who was at the home, during our search warrant execution, we found some meth there, so we placed him under arrest for the meth, and he was incarcerated at the detention center. Around 6 a.m. this morning, we received information that York County was out with a vehicle with 2 bodies. That vehicle was located off of Bonner Horton Road, and at that point in time, we made contact with Sheriff Bruce Bryant and his staff to confirm with them that we actually had an active crime scene in our community, but we did not have any victims or bodies. But the information that was provided to us by the tipster that we believe the vehicle fire and the bodies that they had in York County was in fact connected to our crime scene. We had information that these 2 gentlemen were murdered there and may have been murdered as far back as June the 9th. That timeline is still being established as we continue our investigation, and the bodies were transported over to York County, obviously sometime during June the 11th, and the vehicle set on fire. As the vehicle was no longer on fire, but from my understanding, investigators on scene, the fire had spread, and it was a forest fire in the area near where the vehicle was discovered. We continued our investigation. It was a parallel investigation that time with multiple agencies involved. The York County Sheriff's Office, along with SLED, the York County Coroner's Office, they conducted the scene investigation in York County. One of our detectives went on scene to corroborate, pass information between the 2 crime scenes that were established in both counties. We continue to process the scene here, and we received enough information shortly after 10 a.m. this morning that we obtained murder warrants on both Donald Cresswell and suspect number 2, Stephen Eugene Parker. And at that time, we made a very diligent effort to locate Mr. Parker due to his violent past. He's been arrested numerous times. We actually had SWAT officers continuously going, and he was 1 step ahead of us. But we was able to locate him this afternoon at approximately 2:15 at a home off of Norman Boulevard here in Cherokee County. He was taken into custody with the Cherokee County SWAT team, assisted by members of the Cherokee County Detective Division and the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division as well. And there was no incident that took place during his arrest. We have provided you a copy of the warrant for each suspect. There will be additional warrant signed for murder. We have 2 victims. In this case here, it's a little bit unique. We are waiting for confirmation of positive identification through the coroner's office and to make sure that we properly notify the victims' families in this case as well. So if you'll notice on the copy of the warrants that were provided to you, we redacted the victim's name until we can positively ID them. We believe we got enough information last night, early this morning, that in fact is one of our victims, but again, we won't release that until the proper time. We want to obviously let you guys know the investigation's ongoing. There is not a public threat. These gentlemen knew each other. We believe that it was a drug deal that went bad, started in North Carolina, came to South Carolina, and then ultimately ended in those 2 men being murdered here in Cherokee County. But the investigation will continue, will be ongoing. Our detectives will begin to focus their efforts on persons who may have assisted in taking the bodies over to York County and allowing the persons who carried the vehicle and the bodies over there who assisted them. Will be seeking those individuals as well. And obviously we want to thank all the agencies that were involved, the York County Sheriff's Office, SLED, York County Coroner's Office, the Cleveland County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office, and the officers here at the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office. It certainly was a daunting task for the men and women in law enforcement, but the spirit of cooperation was excellent, and the citizens here in our community and in York County can rest safely knowing these subjects are off the street. And I want to especially thank our guys. I've got some guys that have been up for about 24 straight hours without any sleep, and 2 of them are in the back of the room that's probably had less than 4 hours of sleep. 2 of our detectives that have been leading this investigation, Detective Ted Sullinger and Detective Stephen Neely, along with their captain, Captain Tim Clark. And so that's where we are in this investigation. It will certainly continue. There will be more things to develop in the next few days. We believe that we have the 2 people that were in the home at the time the murder took place. And again, now we'll begin to focus on any folks that assisted them after the murders, helping them dispose of evidence. And at this time, I'll take any questions from you men and women.
So the 2 men are charged with the 2 murders? Each are charged with 2?
Yes.
Okay.
They will be charged with additional count of murder once we get the positive identification on the other victim. So there will be another murder count served on Mr. Parker as well as Donald Criswell once we get that positive ID from the coroner's office.
And you mentioned, go ahead.
And I know you can't really say much about the victims per se, but do you know what, I think you mentioned that they were from North Carolina. Where in North Carolina?
I can tell you that they were white males and they are from the North Carolina area, and that's all we want to release now out of respect to the families and making sure that we do have positive ID due to the bodies being burned. It may take us a little time before we get that confirmation.
And you said drug deal gone bad. I'm sorry if I missed this, but 2 charged, were they the dealers or were they?
The information that we got, that 2 guys from North Carolina actually had came down and wanted to meet the 2 gentlemen from Cherokee County in North Carolina, and as they met in North Carolina, the 2 gentlemen from Cherokee County, they were spooked, thought these guys were setting them up. They began to talk later, talked them into coming down to Cherokee County where they were going to conduct the drug transaction, and at that point in time, the information we've got is one of the gentlemen got up and began shooting both of the victims in the home.
Do you think it was over meth?
I don't know exactly the type of drug, and at this stage, like I said, the investigation is ongoing, and we're not going to release all those details at this point.
Sheriff, can you tell me whose truck they were in?
No, ma'am, not at this time. Again, because it could go back and connect to the actual person and the family, and out of respect for those families, we want to make sure that the families are properly notified. I can tell you that the truck did not belong to the 2 suspects who were charged.
Okay, so it was one of the victims, the truck they arrived in.
I won't say that either, confirm that, because it could be someone else's pickup truck.
And you could have more arrests coming?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it believed more people were in the home?
The information we got now, we believe there were only 4 people in the home at the time of the murder, and those were the 2 victims, and the 2 suspects are in custody. But again, the investigation will continue. But at this stage, we don't have any information that no other persons were in the home other than the 4 that have been mentioned.
As far as that tipster is concerned, I mean, had they been monitoring some of the suspicious activity that might have been happening within the home, or was this something that, they just noticed something just out of the blue?
They had received information from a source that something had taken place over the past few days, and they were concerned, and so they called law enforcement, and because they called, we're going to keep their information confidential at this time. But we're very thankful for that tipster. Most of our cases, whether it's a murder or any type of case, is driven by people who give tips to law enforcement. And we're just thankful these folks come forward, trusted law enforcement enough to give that information, and our guys did a proper follow-up to go and discover and corroborate some of the information the tipster had provided. And like I say, it's kind of surprising to see the gentleman burning carpet there, and that's some of the information we received prior to our arrival.
And as far as Creswell and Parker, you mentioned that I believe Parker does have a bit of a criminal history. As far as Creswell, does he have a criminal history?
They both have an extensive criminal background.
Are they
Both-
familiar with you?
Yes, sir. They're familiar. Mr. Parker is out on bond now for drug charges. Mr. Creswell has been charged with drugs in the past, and they both have an extensive record.
Anything as serious as this ever?
Yes, with Mr. Parker. Yes.
Murder.
And was there a known connection between them before all this?
We don't have any information at this time to establish a connection and their relationship prior to their meeting this past week.
Are they volunteering this evening?
No, ma'am. It's the murder charge. It'll go before a circuit court judge, so it'll probably be we have General Sessions Court next week. They may get in front of a judge next week, or it could be longer.
Were both victims shot to death, and was there a weapon recovered from the scene?
Both victims were shot. At this point in time, we have not recovered a murder weapon.
Sheriff, I know you said one of the suspects was in custody first. Was he cooperative in helping out in this investigation?
Yes, sir. He was cooperative in assisting our investigators as well. And also at the residence where we picked up Mr. Parker this afternoon, our guys just finished executing a search warrant at that home, looking for any potential evidence in that home as well. And so I say this is a very active, ongoing investigation. As we're in here, there's still guys out in the field working again, and we're going to search another car, later on. But we're continuing this investigation and hoping we can continue to pull other pieces of the puzzle together. But we feel very confident that we've got the two persons responsible for our victims' deaths.
And you said one of these suspects has been involved in some serious stuff like this before. Can you talk? Was this a murder?
I'm not going to discuss that because he was a juvenile, and so I'll just leave it at that. But he's a bad guy. I'm glad that he is off our street. Unfortunately, we had to lose two innocent persons, had to lose their life as a result of this man. But he has shown a history of snubbing his nose at the system, both of them continuously being arrested and then being out on probation. One here certainly out on bond and continuing to commit crimes. So he's been a nuisance to our community for many years, and so hopefully he will never see the other side of the bars again.
And
I
then
know you
Parker?
Yes, sir.
Or,
I know you said that you had been keeping up with them. I don't know if that was checking up with, I don't know what you check up or how your system works, but could this have been avoided? Were you one step too late?
No, ma'am, don't think it could have been avoided. Mr. Creswell has been certainly someone who's been on our radar screen for dealing meth in our community, but ultimately we have not been able to actually catch him with any of the product. And so, but he is someone that's been on our radar screen for a while, and he's been arrested numerous times.
You said that your original information suggested that the bodies may have been going towards the river. Were there multiple attempts to get rid of these bodies? And if so, can you talk about that?
That we don't know if there were multiple attempts. What we do believe is based off the timeline, the information that was provided to us, that obviously the pickup truck and the bodies were taken somewhere and left for a period of time, and then was taken over into York County probably sometime late yesterday evening or late last night, and then the vehicle set on fire.
Can you describe how you were able to connect your investigation to the Union County scene?
Basically, we had a crime scene, information provided that possibly had two persons that had been murdered, and that they had came to that scene in a pickup truck, and with York County telling us that they had a pickup truck with two bodies, then we felt confident that those very well may be our victims in the scene that we were processing.
So to confirm, is it believed Creswell and Parker are the ones who have also transported the bodies?
No, ma'am. At this moment, we're not going to elaborate on who transported the bodies. That portion of investigation is still ongoing, and that is developing as we speak. And so again, we're looking for the folks. We know that they were possibly assisted by other people. We've got credible information that a female was seen walking in that area where the pickup truck was discovered. So we're going to continue our efforts to look for anybody who may have assisted either one of them or both of them in disposing of the bodies in our neighboring county in York.
Okay, so it's believed that the bodies were transported in the truck to one location and then transported to the York County location.
That's what we believe.
What location, the initial?
We don't have an exact location. We do know that there's a family member that has a large tract of land that the truck could have been put there, because also we've received information that there may have been a stolen vehicle unrelated to this case that occurred here on Monday of this week. We actually were trying to locate that vehicle as well at this point in time. We've not located that vehicle, but again, it's not connected to this incident.
But it was in this area?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Was your first suspect arrested before the transport?
I'm sorry.
Was your first suspect, it looks like the timeline was here, search warrant obtained on Thursday evening. Was he arrested and put in custody before the transport of the bodies?
That we can't say. Obviously, he was in custody. We believe that he was in custody at the time that the vehicle was probably set on fire. The arson investigators will be able to bring that timeline down for us once they can determine, how far that fire burned out from the truck, what type of ring was burned around the truck, how long it would have taken it to burn. We'll be able to narrow those timelines down in the next few days, but we believe that at the time the truck was set on fire, the victim was probably either being interviewed by us or he was either in custody.
Or the suspect, rather.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said victims.
I'm sorry.
Was an
That's right.
accelerant used?
Yes, sir, accelerant was used.
Don't mean to be nitpicky here, but what was the involvement of the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office?
We had reached out to them. We had information to believe that our victims were possibly from North Carolina, and they assisted in trying to help us ID the pickup truck as well as the victims in this case. And so they went and checked a few homes and locations for us last night throughout the early morning hours.
Younger victims, older victims?
I would consider them young victims.
Over 18 though? You're calling them men, right?
Yeah, they're men.
Sheriff, when do you expect to release those names?
We'll probably allow the coroner to do that out of York County. Typically, that's our protocol. Once the coroner establishes a positive identification and we're able to make contact with the victims' families, the coroners will do that from York County, and she will release that information.
Obviously, this case was pretty violent and pretty brutal. How are y'all doing? I mean, I know you guys have.
Everybody's good. Our guys are tired, but again, like I say, it was a great effort, spirit of cooperation amongst all the agencies, and so like I say, very proud of our staff. They worked around the clock, and every lead that came in, they just kept digging, and so it was great police work on their part, and so we're going to continue the investigation and make sure that we've got a great case to submit to the solicitor. And so hopefully these guys will never be back on the streets again.
Since perspective here, this doesn't happen here very often, does it?
Doesn't happen here very often. We usually average, 1 to 2 murders per year here in Cherokee County, and we've met that number already here in June. So we're hoping that we don't have any more throughout 2015.
Are these the first and second murders for
This
Cherokee
is
County?
only 2 for the year for Cherokee County. Yeah,
Wow.
the city has experienced some, but Cherokee County, this is our first 2.
You've seen a lot of crime through the years, I'm sure. How would you describe this crime?
It was very violent, based off the information we had, and ultimately is driven by what drives almost every crime in South Carolina, North Carolina, and every community across the United States. It's people who are addicted to drugs, whether it's meth, whether it's heroin, whether it's crack, marijuana. It's people that are addicted to drugs, and they continue to want to use that product to harm themselves and others. And there's robberies. There's folks who use those products and they don't have a job, and so they're going to steal from you and I and everybody else in this community to support their habits. And but it was a pretty brutal the way these guys were murdered and then how their bodies were disposed of.
In the area in York County where this happened, they had just set up a neighborhood watch program just very recently. It sounds like this information that you got from your county was vital in getting this. Where would you be without these tips?
And we would be. Probably didn't even know we had a murder that occurred in Cherokee County, just quite honest with you. And that tipster and I called in, that's what led us to go to that home to make that initial inquiry. And had we not received that tip, we could be very well not even realizing we had a murder that occurred here. And so we encourage folks to call in tips, any type of activity they think is illegal in their community. Call the Crime Stoppers lines, remain anonymous, call the sheriff's office directly, whatever they're comfortable doing. But that is a great tool that citizens have to notify law enforcement. They will see things different in their community before law enforcement will, and we stress that all the time here in Cherokee County. They're going to see increase of cars coming up to a home. They're going to see people going in and out, and they're going to know something's different. And so we encourage them to contact us and let us know so our guys can begin to look into those homes or businesses and determine if any illegal activity is in fact taking place. Any other questions? In closing, I want to thank you guys and you ladies, because I know that I didn't meet some of y'all's deadlines, and, but again, in the interest of our guys' safety, it was paramount that this Parker guy did not know that we were on his heels. We did not even want him to realize that we knew what was going on in York was even connected over here. So I appreciate your patience in allowing our guys to do their job. And again, we were able to take him into custody without incident. And again, I appreciate your patience. That made a difference for our staff, keeping them safe. So thank you. And if you got anything else, I'll hang out here another 30 minutes.
Yeah, his location, he was arrested in Gaffney.